Hi guys, Jumping of Doom here, and welcome to the first video of a new series I'm doing. The premise of the series is that I don't really like anime very much, but I'm surrounded by anime lovers, and they keep bugging me about how I need to watch all these different anime. So I decided that the only way I could get them to stop would be to finally watch the anime. And the only point of me watching the anime is making YouTube videos about them. And so, this series was born. I'm watching all the different anime that people keep bugging me about, and then I'm making a video reviewing said anime. I decided to start things off with Your Lie in April, because that's the one I've been bugged about the most. The way I decided to do these reviews is I'm talking about them in a few different ways. Firstly, there's my expectations going into it. Secondly, there's my opinions of the first episode. Thirdly, there's my first impressions of the show as a whole right after finishing it. Fourthly, there's what I think of the characters. Fifthly, there's how it broke and or followed my expectations. And finally, I'll say my overall opinions of the show and I'll rank it out of 100. I'm really sorry if I completely slam one of your favorite anime. I wish I could like things more, but that just seems to be the way I am about things. Anyway, let's get started. Spoiler warning for Your Lie in April. So, first is my expectations going into it. I was told this was a depressing but beautiful story. I was also told to watch them as they play their instruments, because apparently they made it completely accurate. I was also warned that I was assured to cry at least a little bit, but I already knew that wasn't going to happen. That's because I never really cry or even get all that sad during movies and shows. My family and friends say that's because I'm heartless, but I don't think that's it, because whenever something sad happens in real life, I cry really hard actually. I think it might be because there's a part of me that always knows what I'm watching isn't really happening, so I don't really get sad very much. When I watch things by myself, I usually don't react much to anything at all. Well, unless it's funny. I'm a sucker for funny things. And it's especially weird because my sister Coffee Alpaca will start sobbing at the tip of a hat. Like one time, she was watching some show on her laptop. I walked through the room, and she's just bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yeah, it's just this thing happened in the show I'm watching." Anyway, with all that information I was given, I thought that someone was likely going to die, the musical parts were going to be stunning, and that I probably wasn't going to like it very much. The next thing on my list is my opinions of the first episode. So, it starts off with Kaori chasing the black cat, may he rest in peace, and doing other things in the park. But we're gonna skip past that part and start from when the main character, Koze, was performing live on stage. And then it cuts to him being a teenager. So apparently, as a kid, he was a piano prodigy, and then he gave it up. He was forced to play by his mom, but then his mom died, and he breaks down in the middle of a performance and never plays again. After we learn all that important backstory stuff, he meets the character Kaori at the park. And, well, they immediately hit it off. She apparently likes Koze's best friend Watari. I think I'm pronouncing that right anyway. She's playing music with some kids, and Koze starts seeing the world with more color. And then, his friends Watari and Tsubaki get there while Koze and Kaori are having a grand old time. And see, Kauze is only really there because this is a date that Tsubaki set up for Watari and Kaori. And she didn't want to feel weird being the only third wheel, so she had Kauze come too. Kaori is a classical musician, just like Kauze used to be. Only Kaori plays the violin, and Kauze played the piano. Now, when Kauze first sees her, they do that thing they do in shows all the time to show, like they're immediately in love, where they zoom in and they go do this pink glowing effect thing, and there's pink flower petals blowing all around and stuff like that. And the first thing that came into my mind was, she's gonna die. I'm calling it. She's about to be playing the violin in a competition, and they're all supposed to come watch her. But Kauze doesn't want to, so Kaori does the only logical thing. She grabs his hand and says that he should come watch. So he does, but that happens in the next episode. After watching the first episode, I was a little bit put off, not gonna lie, because it didn't seem like my kind of show. Although I was impressed by how beautiful the scenery was. I wasn't expecting it to look so good. Anyway, all in all, I was afraid that I wasn't gonna like it and that everybody was going to, be kind of disappointed in me. The next thing on my list is my first impressions of the show as a whole right after finishing it. I had some problems with it, namely how slow it is. Like, they spend a lot of time talking about things I don't care about. And sometimes it would frustrate me, and other times I would just be bored. So I think they really shouldn't have been spending so much time on stuff like that, because sometimes it just went on and on and on and on, and it would get really annoying. And then I don't think it had a very satisfying ending for a few reasons. First, they didn't show the audience's reaction to the final song. Second, they didn't even tell you who won. And third, the end relationship between Kauze and Tsubaki is a little unclear. It's kind of implied that they get together in the end, but they don't actually tell you. And my sister Coffeefield Alpaca never picked up on the fact that they get together, and she didn't think that they ever did. So it's a little unclear. And while I know those things aren't the most important things, that they weren't really worrying about that stuff as much because that's not what the story was really about, but, the competition was what I was most invested in. So the fact that they don't even tell you who won bothers me a bit. And then the last of the big problems that I had with this show is the moments that I like to call anime moments. The easiest way to explain anime moments is to show you one of them. So, here you go.
You broke it again? But we only just got this window fixed!
Every window I take out is another notch on the old bat.
Just hit him softer, please!
You telling me not to bring my A game?
I really don't like those moments, but they happen in almost every anime, so there's not really getting around them. And I know that some of you will say that my problems with the show are kind of nitpicky, but I'm just a nitpicky sort of person, so I guess you're right then. And I do have one more problem with this show, but that has to do with the characters, so we'll talk about that a bit later. But all in all, I would say that right after finishing, I thought it was okay. Just okay. Now, I will say that I think I was being a little harsh, and now that I've had time to think about it more, my opinions have changed a bit since then, but we'll talk about that a bit later too. The next thing on my list is what I think of the characters. So I'm going to start off by addressing the big problem that I have, which is how mean they all are to Kauze. I'm a pretty sympathetic person, so when people are being mean to other people, it just makes me angry. And everyone in his life beats him up. A lot. And I guess I don't know if this is just a thing that happens in anime a lot or what, but I mean, seriously, they talk about how his mom beating him was terrible, which, yeah, it was terrible, but then they all beat him too. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it really annoys me. But on the other hand, the funniest one-liner, in my opinion anyway, only exists because of them beating him. Which, the line that I'm talking about is when Tsubaki is confessing her love for Koze and, you know what? I think it would just be easier for me to show it to you.
It took a lot of tears to get here. Betcha he's crying too. Not because of his feelings, but because I kicked him so hard.
But I laughed so hard at that line. I just really think it's funny for some reason. But now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'm gonna actually talk about the different characters. So, obviously, there's the main character, Koze. I think he's one of the best characters in the show, which it is a good thing that the main character is one of the best ones in the show, since sometimes the main character is super annoying, and it just makes the whole show practically unwatchable. Then there's Kaori, which I think she was okay. She was one of my favorites, but she was just fine. Then there's Tsubaki, and I would say that she's one of my least favorite characters. Although, if you like her, then I can understand why, but she's just kind of annoying to me. Then there's Watari, of whom I think is kind of dumb and shallow, which is kind of stated in the show, but it's still really annoying. Takashi is kind of weird. He doesn't really have a whole lot of character to him, other than how he doesn't like Koze. And then I kind of feel the same way about Emi as well. Her character was practically just, it just consisted of two things. One, she hates Koze. And two, she has a crush on Koze. And of course, they're both amazing pianists. And my favorite character is the Black Cat. I think that's all of the more notable characters, so we're going to move on. The next thing on my list is how it broke and or followed my expectations. I was correct about the musical parts being stunning. It really is super cool that they made it accurate. And my favorite scene was actually one of the musical parts. It's when Kaori plays the violin for the first time. I have to say that after the episode 1, I was a little unsure about how the show was going to go for me. But then, the very next episode, they blew me away with that scene. Another one of my predictions was that someone was going to die, which not only was I correct about that, but I also called who was going to die immediately as well. I kind of feel a little bad about it though, because when they started implying that she was going to die, I wasn't even sad. I was just really happy that I called it. The last of my predictions / expectations was that I wasn't gonna like it very much. And while that was correct at first, well, I'll explain my thoughts on that one in a second. The final thing on my list is my overall opinions of the show, and ranking it out of 100. Let's start off with my overall opinions. So, as I said, I didn't really like it much initially. But now that I've had time to think about it, I think that maybe I was being a bit too harsh. Don't get me wrong, every problem I said that I have with this show still applies. I just think that even with all those problems, there's still so many great things about this show. And if you haven't seen it, which if you haven't, then what in the world are you still doing here? Then I would definitely recommend it. And now, to rank it out of 100. My final ranking of this show is... Oh wait, I need to say one more thing first. It's probably the most important thing about this show, and I didn't even mention it. The lie in April that the show is named after is the super duper unpredictable twist ending. Kaori lied in April about liking Watari. She doesn't like him. She liked the main character Koze the whole time. I know! This is super shocking information. Anyway, I give it a 78 out of 100, which, all things considered, that's a pretty good score. Now that I've made my review, and I've told you everything I think about it, I think it's your turn to tell me what you think about it. So, in the comments, I want you to share all of your thoughts on this show. And please, I would love to read comments about just how wrong I am. This has been and is still now Jumping Jay of Doom. Bye!